good sound quality and all that. But
Yeah.
man, thanks for having me on. I'm very excited to chat with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for taking a minute out. Where are you located?
I'm in San Francisco,
Oh,
so
great town.
I've been here the last 7 years, and it's been a good setup
Yeah,
for life. And
yeah.
me and my wife and our baby, and it's been a blast.
That's cool, man. Very cool. Well, before we start kind of peeling back the layers of, how you got to San Francisco, where it all started, I want to
Sure,
know how you got through COVID. The last 3 years was quite an ordeal for all of us.
no
How did you
joke.
get through it? And how has it changed the way that you live your life now?
Gosh, how did I get through COVID? So, started off, we were actually on vacation in London and going to do a second leg in Germany as like the world started closing down.
Wow.
And me and my wife and my parents, we were on this trip. It was like a visit to my mom's like ancestral home in Germany and stuff. And next thing we knew, like the world was shutting down. So we ended up hanging out at my parents' place in Bakersfield, California, where I'm from, for the remaining like for the next 3 months or so. It was great. We had like happy hour and jalapeno poppers, and my parents have a pool, and we got to hang out and everything. It was before we had kids, and then a lot of just like hunkering down at home, obviously in SF. One of the things that two big things that were really helpful. One was I did like a bike commute still. So I'd like still go out, ride my bike before I started work, which is what I was used to before everything shut down.
Yeah.
And then because we're big travelers, and because we couldn't like keep traveling and everything, I would go on these like fun, almost like Google Maps expeditions
Right.
where I would explore explore places in Chile or wherever, like all these places where I would really love to visit. And yeah, so I mean, between those things, we were able to make do for
Yeah.
sure. Um, it was also, that's like the sunny side. On the hard side, it definitely pressure cooker of tension at points with me and my wife, and we kind of would get fed up with each other sometimes. We really had to figure out how to communicate. It's weird because like when you're working in an office or something, like you've got all this time where you're not around each other. And so it makes it like, okay, we get to be around each other. It's like this sweet gift or something. But then it's just like, oh no, we're around each other 24/7 for
Yeah.
months on end. Um, on the one hand, it helped us become very connected and get far more time than we would in, probably like a decade of normal marriage, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely had those hot moments where it's just like, okay, we just got to dig in, we got to figure this out, and um, go take a walk and get our separate space or whatever that was. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a little bit of what that looked like. And the city of San Francisco had a kind of drop in population, like lots of hardship. At that point, we were living in the Tenderloin district in San Francisco, which is a rough neighborhood, and we'll have a lot of drug use and prostitution and so on. And it got cleaned up for a while because a lot of people got housed in hotels. But then that the money sort of ran out for that, and then things got a lot worse, a lot faster.
Wow.
So fast forward, we a few big straws broke the camel's back, and it was time to move out of that neighborhood. But
Yeah.
we're still here in San Francisco, and it's bouncing back.
Cool. So let's examine exactly what you do for a living, get to kind of a better understanding. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day. All right.
Sure.
One of the kids looks up at you and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I say I have long conversations with people to understand what it is that they care about when it comes to their homes, so that I can really, really help people who are having troubles at home have a better life, solve some of their problems there. And also, so I can hear what's really working super well for other people, and then share that with folks who are paying attention to some of the stuff that I'm putting out on the internet. So that's kind of like my answer for a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, what did you want to be when you were in the 3rd grade? What was your dream growing up?
Oh gosh, third grade. You know, it's so funny because like I think it's fitting for what I do now. The thing that was always clear for me since I was like 4 years old is I really wanted to be a husband and a dad. That was like the biggest driver for me.
Wow.
I was also, smart kid, loved to read, excelled in school. So I kind of wanted to be a teacher and uh, have always loved learning and curiosity. So um, yeah, I feel like those things sort of converge now. Of course, I also want to be a veterinarian and hang out with animals a lot, and so on. So I think that's like, yeah, I'd say it's like husband, dad, teacher, veterinarian. Some convergence of those things was the goal in third grade, plus maybe some Pokemon card collecting and so on. So
Of course. Yeah.
yeah.
So let's go back to where you were born and raised and what some of the more specific seeds that were put into you to become a coach, to become someone that wants to help other people.
Yeah, I was born in Bakersfield, California, Central Valley, California. It's a large town. I'd put it that way. There's like still a sense that people know each other, has a community feel. You're not getting lost in a metropolitan space. And there was a sense with my mom being a school teacher, my dad being a photojournalist at the local newspaper, that we had a responsibility to nurturing our community. We've got to be people who are invested, whether it's through education or information, to help people. That was exemplified most clearly. My parents, every Tuesday night, they go out to the homeless rescue mission, and to this day, now decades and decades later, they go serve meals to folks who are homeless on the streets of Bakersfield. I would go out with them as a kid. And so I think it was just embedded in me the importance of helping people in need. Uh, so I'd say fast forward through the future, I start acquiring these skills in not only like researching curiosity and interviewing people, but also coaching. I'm trained formally as a spiritual director, which is kind of like a coach for the big spiritual questions of life: purpose, meaning, um, identity, personality, these kinds of things. And I decided, after having had that experience with my family, and it was a mix of positive and negative. Um, you know, I don't want to throw my parents under the bus, but there were some hard times that were really rough for us. And what I found was the importance of home as being this tone setter, foundation set for our lives. So I became interested in helping people, coaching from that angle to find purpose, meaning, sense of identity that grows out of the soil of our homes.
So, who has been kind of a hero for you in your life?
So funny, but I would say there's probably like two big people who come to mind. One is the existential philosopher Soren Kierkegaard. I went to graduate school. I was all about existential philosophy that converged with my interest in spirituality and these wrestling with big questions of meaning,
Hmm.
right? Like what does it look like for us to devote ourselves existentially to a meaning, a purpose, a drive in life? I feel like Kierkegaard, referred to him as like my dead best friend. Like there's a sense, I never met him, but when I read him, there's this sense of kinship that I have with him that is just so wild. Um, the second is Mr. Rogers. Grew up watching Mr. Rogers. Have read his biographies, and I feel a real a real kinship with him as well as a person who was invested in helping children make sense of the world. I think that is a driver for me as a father now, but even before I had kids, I was like a kidless dad. That was like a a way I would describe myself because I just wanted to help people understand the world. So there's this teacher part of me that is invested in the development and especially of mine towards kids and families as well.
That's interesting. So as somebody that obviously picked people that are very real, that have been very instrumental for you, who's alive right now on the planet that you would love to meet and spend some time with?
Good question. I think now that I'm in a phase, because I would say I spent a large chunk of my life being really idealistic and esoteric, frankly. Like I was very like bookish and abstract in my thinking. Anybody who's gonna like love existentialism or something is gonna, be invested in that kind of thing. Um, so now I feel like the mission is actually to ground it all in reality and building stuff. So I think I would want to talk to some of the folks who help take things from concept to a designed reality. So actually, Joni Ive comes to mind, the formerly lead designer at Apple,
Yeah.
as a person who has helped translate huge vision into tangible products. How do they feel? What do they look like? How can those actually be instrumental in reshaping humanity's approach to everything, frankly, with the invention of iPhone, iMac, and so on. So uh, I think that connection seems really important for me to discover, that design connection, to take things from abstract thing, let's solve a problem, a human problem, and take that into the market. What will actually work for people or not. So I'd say that's like probably the next step, a person who I'd love to have a nice long conversation with.
So I got a quick existential story for you since you brought it up a few
I'd
times and
love
it's
to
been a big hit.
hear.
Okay. So I was working at the YMCA. I was running two labs, computer labs, back when AOL was big. They funded Steve Case, funded all of these different organizations, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, YMCA's. So I had two
Yeah.
labs and they were in pretty impoverished areas.
Well,
And at one point, they were really trying to clean house at the YMCA and figure some things out. So they brought this consultant in. His name was Bob, and he was kind of this magic guru guy. And we all get up in this boardroom, and I had just gotten out of corporate America. I was on detox. I was like, all right,
oh, I bet.
my filter was gone. Just let's get to it. So we're in the room and we're all talking. And at one point, I was trying to weave together a story, and I said, "Waiting for Godot," and and he looked over and he
Wow.
was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah," and I just went with it. I mean, I'm a big fan of existentialism. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of the book. That dude was all over me after that. Like, he would always pick me out of a group. We'd always talk. He was a big fan. And it was that moment when I said waiting for Godot, every
Yeah.
light in the universe went off in his brain. He was just freaked out because I
Yes.
don't know if he
Yes.
had been in corporate America for so long, no one ever even would have thought about that concept. But to me, it was just native. I was like, here you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with Kierkegaard and that ilk, I've always
Yes.
been into that mindset. So anyway, that's always been my waiting for Godot moment. It was
I
pretty
love
cool.
it. You're waiting, but he actually showed up, and it was this guy who wants to keep it having a conversation with you. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
so good.
yeah. And he just kept going and going, and he was into it. He was like, I think at one point he said, "Man, I had been in this capacity for decades, and I'd never heard anybody bring anything up about anything literature-wise or Godot." And
Yeah,
I'm like, "Where were you at? What were you doing? Were
it's
you guys
so
drinking
funny.
on the clock? What was going on?"
Yeah, seriously. The other day I was doing like this hot yoga sprint here in San Francisco. I like signed up for this 10-day unlimited pass. I'm going every single day. I'm just sweating bullets constantly. And I was connected with this like random dude. He has this accent. He ended up that he was from the Czech Republic, and he and I were chatting, and then we were chatting like, why do you come to do hot yoga? And I asked him, and then he says something like, it's for purity of heart. And I said, purity of heart is to will one thing. And
Yeah.
then we had this moment where like
Yep.
we both know Kierkegaard,
That's it.
and it's just like it's like a wild thing when you have those moments of exchange. Like that's my my parallel story to exactly what you're
Yeah.
saying.
No, it's
Yeah,
true.
where you realize like you've read the same stuff, you had this connection into a certain way of thinking actually too that comes along with all that. And it's like finding your tribe, man. I love it.
Yeah, because sometimes the thing is, as populated as this planet is, it gets very lonely. So if you can find someone that really needles deep, deep into like the folds of your brain of something that you wouldn't have expected, it just makes it that much better.
Absolutely,
You know.
absolutely, yeah. I
So
love it, man.
yeah,
I think when and I feel like people who are into existentialism too have a particular like drive because
yeah,
it can feel like such a solitary thing.
yeah,
That's maybe a tenet of it. Actually, is like the solo, occasionally lonely reality of existence.
yeah.
So when you have a moment where it's just like, oh yeah, we're both in this together, it's so magical.
It's a meta bubble of existentialism, is what it is.
Wow.
So let's get into what really makes you who you are. What is the motivator? What's the gas in your tank? What is the spark in your torch every day to make you go out and help people?
Well, I'd say I'm like a combination of like a deep investment in home and a deep desire for social impact. It comes a little bit from that backstory with my parents and what they were like and what it was like to grow up in that household where, we're living together, we're connecting and so on, but then also we're going out and serving the community. So once years ago, me and my wife, this was before we started like really dating. We're having this long conversation and we're kind of like, will we or won't we conversation. We're at this beautiful rose garden in Oakland, California. And we just asked the question, if you had to like stand for one thing in your life, what would it be? And it led to this nice long conversation. And for her, she said deep connection, a deep relational connection, intimacy with people. And I said, home. Home is actually the big thing that I stand for because I think so much actually comes out of people having good homes where they love to be, where it's safe for them, where it's inspiring for them to go out and, serve the world. And so I said home. Now, my wife is a Harvard Law School trained attorney. She has spent herself in especially nonprofit immigration law. So she is all about this global perspective on the world. And she is also all about helping people who otherwise would fall through the system, not get the sort of help that they need. And over time, I think she and I have been able to almost like zip up our interests in both this desire and drive for home and deep connection and social impact and global perspective. And now I also bring this value for um, maybe something like visibility to the problem, creating awareness to these things. I think she's driven towards that, but she's not necessarily going to be like, oh, I should go produce content on this. Right. Like,
Yeah.
but that's something that I actually care about as a storyteller, a teacher, a communicator in maybe a different kind of way than she does. So I would say things that help me go out and coach people in their home and do this research for global perspectives on home life. It's actually almost now built into the way that our my relationship with my wife functions, and it's built into the place that we live day in day out. And
Yeah.
I have this daily reminder of our quality of life, period, across the board, is going to grow out of how well home is going or
Yeah.
how well it's not going. So, how can I, yeah, just kind of like encapsulate that message and keep being of service to people with it?
So what are you the proudest of that you've done in your life so far?
Hard question.
Yeah.
I don't think about that honestly that often. Actually, the thing that comes to mind, I might get a little choked up talking about it actually, but a year and a half ago, I was working as a minister at a church and it was like going all right and everything, but it also just wasn't capturing the same sort of passion, drive, and so on that it previously had for me. On top of that, we were adjusting to having a baby. She was still pretty fresh at that point. Me and my wife, idealistic as we can be, we're both like, okay, we can both work full time jobs and take care of an infant. It's not really how it works. Um, so we hit this like hard impasse where we realize we can't both be working and also take care of our kid. And also, I'm at this kind of pivot moment in my career where I don't really want to keep doing that line of work. And so I choose to quit and I choose to be home with our baby, chart a path for a new career, kind of bring some things that I had in the background to bear on that transition moment and kind of like build some businesses that I had kind of going in the background. And I tell you what, like taking care of my my daughter, I'm very, very proud of pushing pause on a lot of things and investing in her in the earliest moments of her life before she's even 20 pounds, like the the psychological attachment that comes from the earliest stages of a kid's life, it's all in entirely presence and visceral and eye contact, that sort of stuff. And so I'm very proud, and it's been real hard, frankly. It's like a tough thing to transition careers from doing church work. It's also a challenge to just take care of a sleepless baby. Um, it's tiring, and I'm very, very proud of making that shift. That was tough, but I I hope and pray that it pays dividends in my daughter's life. It serves her
Yeah.
as she keeps going. So I think that's one of those decisions that was a hard choice to make that I'm very proud of.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you're in control. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah. Gosh, I'm a people oriented, fun loving, hospitable, friendly, research oriented person. I love knowing things. I love learning things. I love communicating and teaching. And I love like long conversations that meander with people. That's one of my favorite things on the planet is to have people over for a nice long dinner party and then we're sipping wine late into the night talking about life. That's that's like prime time for me. So when it comes to that, I'm this combination of, you know, empath and research mind and host, um, plus maybe like a mix of just like dadish goofiness. I love to be silly with my daughter. I'm I have actually trained in improv comedy, so I used to perform in a theater here in San Francisco for several years. And play matters a ton to me. I
Yeah,
think that's like part of what life's about. Enjoy it, have fun. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so I'd say all of those things. That was kind of like a broad answer, perhaps, but like all of those things add up to who I
Totally.
perceive myself to be.
Yeah, totally. So if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, hire you, anything pertaining to your world, where can they go?
They can go to homelifedesignlab.com. That is the company that I'm building everything out of right now. Workshops, coaching, doing global research on homes by interviewing folks all around the world. That's where you can find the newsletter, which will tell you about everything. Also, I host a podcast called Home Life for Extraordinary Impact, which is nice long conversations with people from Iran to Denmark to Canada to Guatemala, hearing about their homes, investigating what does home look like for them and what does home look like in global perspective to try to synthesize some insights that'll help people, create a better home for themselves. Ultimately, because I think if one person transforms their quality of life at home and then they invite people into it, that's the stuff of a grassroots social change. And I want to help that happen in the world. So that's what I'm all about. So that's where you can find me.
Right on, Matt. This has been great, man. Thank you for opening up. Thanks for your story. This has been wonderful, man.
I so appreciate being on. Thank you for hosting me. Gosh, you're an incredible communicator and great questions. You just go right for it. And I love it. Thanks
Just
for
get in
having me
there.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, man. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you. And to you too.
Cheers. See you later.